Thank you and welcome to today's initial launch of Blueprint Nebraska. This is an exciting statewide collaboration to help map out comprehensive long-term economic plan to make Nebraska even more competitive. We're holding this event today simultaneously in Lincoln, Omaha, and Scottsbluff. My name is Brian Sloan. I am the president of the Nebraska State Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Today we're joined by our co-chairs for Blueprint Nebraska, Lance Fritz. Lance is the president, CEO, and chairman of Union Pacific Corporation, which is headquartered in Omaha, but has operations across the state. Good morning, Lance.
Good morning, Brian, from Omaha, Nebraska.
And Owen Palm, the president and CEO of 21st Century Equipment in Scottsbluff. Good morning, Owen.
Good morning, Brian. Greetings from Scottsbluff.
And importantly, also joining us today for this announcement are Governor Pete Ricketts and President Hank Bounds of the University of Nebraska. Thank you, gentlemen. Before turning this over to our co-chairs, let me provide you some information about how this effort is going to be structured. First, and probably most importantly, this is intended to be a statewide effort involving business and community leaders from across the state. As someone who's lived in Laurel and Neely and Crete and Gordon and Gearing and Lincoln and Omaha, I think I got most of them, I couldn't be more excited about the central focus of this initiative being statewide and a unified Nebraska around one single economic plan. As Nebraskans, we know that being unified around a winning game plan is really important. The first step in launching Blueprint Nebraska was the agreement of Lance and Owen to provide the leadership that truly crosses the state from one end to the other. They subsequently have worked very hard to organize a steering committee of 19 members from across the state, reflecting a wide geography, all industries, and a broad background of experiences. For instance, just to name 3 of our steering committee members as an example: Leslie Anderson from the Bank of Bennington, Dan Shundoff from Intellicom in Kearney, and John Holzfaster from Holzfaster Farms in Paxton. With the steering committee formed, our next step will be to create 19 separate statewide councils. These councils will dive into the question of how can we use Nebraska's strengths to further our economic future. They'll look into key areas such as agriculture, healthcare, technology and innovation, and workforce, just to name a few. The councils will also work with researchers from our universities and professional staff people with experience in each of the industries. But maybe most importantly in this process, we'll also create a road tour where we will take Blueprint Nebraska to communities across the state to make sure we have that statewide input. And before it's over, literally thousands of Nebraskans will be involved in this process. So that hopefully gives you a little background on our structure. But now let me turn it over to our 2 co-chairs, beginning with Lance Fritz. Lance?
Thank you very much, Brian. And I'm so privileged to join Owen in leading this committee, actually being a part of this committee. Union Pacific and Nebraska have grown up together. We're both over 150 years old, and we've got 8,000 employees that call this great state home. And we deeply understand that the communities that we serve and the health and vibrancy of those communities is all about what makes Nebraska an attractive place to live and work. So this work of this committee, the pulling together all the perspectives that we need to include from across the state, from across different industries, diverse world opinion and view, and boiling it down to what's the state good at, what do we need to be better at, and where do we need to kind of shore up some points of weakness. Ultimately, that's going to turn into a fact-based game plan that's developed for business by business so that we can develop and grow the kinds of businesses that create good paying, long-lived jobs. And that gets back to helping our economies in our communities thrive and those communities to be great places to continue to live and work. I couldn't be happier to be a part of this initiative. Now, the question comes back to, what can you do? Anybody who's watching this. And the short answer is engage, right? Brian mentioned we're going to have road tours across the state in 30-some-odd communities. We want you to show up and tell us what you think is important. Or you can go out to blueprint-nebraska.org and share with us there what you think we should be including and how we should be thinking about certain issues across the state. So Brian, once again, I'm so pleased to be a part of the initiative. Couldn't be happier to join, and I very much appreciate the work that's in front of us and can't wait to get at it.
Lance, thank you for your leadership on this, and thank you for those remarks. Let me now turn to Owen Palm in Scottsbluff.
Thank you, Brian. Good morning, Governor, President Bounds, Lance, and members of the media. I too am excited about being a part of this statewide coalition to develop an economic development plan that can lead to the opportunity to increase our competitiveness, our state's prosperity, and most of all, long-term growth. I hope that it's not lost on you that Lance and I, as co-chairs, are on opposite ends of the state. Lance in Omaha, of course, and myself in Scottsbluff. You know, bookends of the state, so to speak. But I think this is symbolic of our desire to make this a statewide conversation. You know, to do this, as has already been mentioned, we deliberately identified 19 business leaders from across every geography in Nebraska. And these business savvy men and women also represent a wide array of industry sectors. Our goal is to utilize this steering committee to gain a clear understanding of both local and regional economic development successes and best practices as they exist today. We will also take an intense and honest analysis of our strengths and weaknesses as a state and look for opportunities for economic development that rely on those strengths and not spend time and money chasing opportunities that don't play to these strengths. Ultimately, we will share our findings so that each community across Nebraska can make them work in their own way and for their own benefit. My ask, as was Lance's, is that of engagement. The Blueprint Nebraska initiative is a journey, not a destination. During the process, the public will be given opportunities to review our work and provide feedback. In coordination with our chambers, our local chambers, we will be making visits to at least 30 cities across our great state here. We will also be providing access via the website to provide input if you're not able to attend these meetings in person. But at the end of the day, it's about engagement of our business leaders and our citizens of Nebraska to make this initiative successful. So I ask for your support and your engagement during this process. Again, I'm excited to be part of this initiative and look forward to our work. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Owen, and thanks for your leadership on this as well. Now, we've produced a 3-minute video that I think captures the essence of what Blueprint Nebraska is all about. And it's available on our website, again, which is blueprint-nebraska.org, O-R-G. So can we play that now?
What I love about Nebraska is really their relentless spirit.
You can go across this state and meet the greatest people that you've ever met in your life.
Their friendliness, their openness, the work ethic here is just incredible.
They expect to have results, and they don't stop until they're done.
So Blueprint Nebraska is an effort where we bring together business leaders from across the state to think about all the different issues that are going to be important in growing our state.
To combine real data research, making sure that our economy is competitive with other states for the next several generations.
We need a plan to grow and keep high-wage jobs for Nebraska's children and grandchildren. And so having the university engaged at the very base of this process is really important because we have the expertise to be able to do the research about where we are and where we are not, and then make adjustments.
My vision for Blueprint Nebraska is that we capture the voices of all Nebraskans so that this blueprint reflects every community across the state. We've worked very hard to create a steering committee that represents the entire state.
I understand that every community is just a little bit different, but as Nebraskans, we're also unified around making sure that this state is competitive for a good long time.
You know, the longer I've lived in Nebraska, the more I've come to realize that there are some systemic issues out there that I think a process like Blueprint Nebraska can help resolve.
We have a lot of opportunities to identify what our differences are, but this is an opportunity to figure out what we agree on, about things that this state needs to be. So my challenge to anyone out there who might want to be engaged with Blueprint Nebraska is to put their mind in a focus of what we can be instead of worrying about the things that have not worked in the past.
You know, we need to start thinking in different ways and different planes to solve today's problems. You can't solve it the way you've always solved problems.
You know, we are a state that has so much to offer, and we've not done a good enough job yet to be all that we can be. You know, the whole state, it needs one blueprint that drives all of us to create an environment where businesses want to be here, they want to thrive here with us, and that prompts the creation of new businesses.
We've got to listen to everybody aggressively and then be about the business of trying to figure out what's best for the state.
And at the end of the day, it's really about placing the great state of Nebraska in the very best place for success.
That is truly a terrific video that I think captures the essence of what this is about. And now it's my privilege to ask Governor Ricketts to come to the stage. Governor Ricketts is Nebraska's 40th governor, and he's demonstrated a passion for building Nebraska's economy and competitiveness across the state and throughout all communities and all industries. And Governor, we welcome your support and being part of this process.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Brian, and thank you all for participating this morning. Welcome. Folks, we have the best place in the world right here in Nebraska. And we have the best place in the world because of our people. And this Blueprint Nebraska effort will help pull together our people to be able to take our state to the next level. We already know that we have seen tremendous success over the last several years. We're leading the nation in economic development. We've won the Governor's Cup 2 years in a row now for the most economic development projects per capita of any state in the nation. Forbes ranks us the 4th best state overall for business. We've got the 5th lowest unemployment rate in the state, or in the country. We've got the 6th best fiscal condition according to the Mercatus Institute. And U.S. News and World Report ranks us the 7th best state overall. We've seen companies like Costco and Facebook invest in our state, and we're opening up opportunities for our agricultural producers overseas. And while we've accomplished a lot, we can never rest on our laurels. We always have to be thinking about how can we take it to the next level? How can we do even better tomorrow? And that's what this Blueprint Nebraska is about. It's a citizen-led economic development project that will bring together leaders from agriculture, manufacturing, and business to engage community leaders and those job creators about what do we need to do to be able to continue to make sure we have the best place in the world to live, work, and raise a family. I think this is an exciting opportunity, and I'm very grateful to Lance and Owen for leading us in this effort. And I look forward to working together with all the folks in all our communities across this state to put together this blueprint and make sure that we have the plan for growing our state in the future and creating those opportunities, because folks, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. It's about making sure our families can enjoy the good life, send their kids to school, go on that vacation, make sure that our young people can find their careers here in our state, and that's what Blueprint Nebraska will all be about. Thank you very much again for participating today, and I'm looking forward to working with everybody. Brian?
Governor, thank you very much. And finally, I'd like to turn to President Hank Bounds, the president of the University of Nebraska, who's built partnerships between universities, government, and business before. The president was instrumental in bringing both thought leadership and a sense of urgency with business leaders to start this initiative, and we can't thank you enough. President Bounds?
Thanks, Brian. Well, thanks everyone for being here. I'm glad we're finally here. I started on this journey about 2 years ago, designing a process that would really engage business leaders to build a plan that will absolutely ensure that our children and our grandchildren have great opportunities for jobs, and so that they can choose to stay here in Nebraska. I'm excited about the breadth of leadership that we have from across the state. When you look at the industry councils that we will focus on, it's really about understanding ourselves in a deep and meaningful way, understanding ourselves through research, understanding the strengths and challenges that our competitor states have, and then putting a plan together to make certain that we grow this state, that we grow economic opportunity. So I'm excited that we're here. I'm excited that the University of Nebraska has the opportunity to participate, and so Brian, I'll invite you back up. I know that we're going to have a few minutes here where we'll take questions. So again, to Lance and to Owen, thank you very much for accepting the call to lead this effort, and I'm glad that we're finally here.
Thank
Brian?
you. So, at this point, we're going to take questions from the press. Let me explain how we're going to do this. We're obviously in 3 locations this morning. We're going to start right here in Lincoln. Anyone with a question for anyone, including in Scottsbluff and Omaha, please, let's ask our questions from the microphone at the back of this room. And at this point, we'll take any questions you may have.
Hi there, Michelle from KTV in Omaha. Why now? Why is this needed now? You know, the governor went over all the accolades that we have, but why is this an issue right now that you're needed to doing it now?
Well, I'll give you an initial response, and then perhaps the governor would jump in on this one as well, and President Bounds as well. The economy's changing globally and nationally. The issue of competitiveness is going to change with it. And Nebraska has tremendous opportunities and tremendous resources, not the least of which is the people of this state. But to be competitive in the new economy for the next decade or 2 decades, it's going to require a different kind of strategy and a unified strategy. But I'd open it up to you guys.
Yeah, I think Brian's absolutely right. The world is dynamic. It's always changing. And so we always have to be changing along with it to position ourselves for that future growth. And we've got a great resource in President Bounds and the University of Nebraska. President Bounds has been through this process. I'm a big believer in stealing other people's good ideas. They did this in Mississippi, and it has helped tremendously there. So what we want to do is bring that same process, obviously adjust it for what's going to be Nebraskan, but apply that here to really unleash the potential of our people through all this citizen-led economic engagement. So I think this is really a chance for us to look at how we position ourselves for the future and continue to build upon the great foundation that we have.
Brian, this is Lance in Omaha. Can I throw in a 2 cent here?
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I would turn that question around a little bit and say, thank goodness we're in a place where we can do this. The idea of creating a holistic blueprint for the development of the entire state is thanks to a president of our university system who cares deeply, our governor who cares deeply, our chambers of commerce across the state who care deeply, and 21 right now committee members who it didn't take a lot of cajoling to sign up. The need was obvious. We've got pockets of excellent development. Those pockets need to turn into the entire state, and the timing's right now.
Other questions in Lincoln?
Do you have a time frame?
Yeah, I think obviously this is an ambitious endeavor. Right now, our goal is to complete this process in somewhere between 12 and 16 months, but it's obviously going to be an ongoing process. The importance is to make sure we reach out to every community in the state, and so we will take the time to make sure that happens.
What's your vision then? So what, ideally, if you could have what you wanted, what do you see? Like how many more jobs, how many new companies, what kind of companies, tech companies, more agriculture, like what's your vision? If ideally you could have what you wanted, what do you want to see from this?
I'll give you a chamber vision, then I might turn it over to the president and the governor for theirs and also the co-chairs. The importance of having a statewide effort and having lived in many portions of this state, economic development's a little bit different depending on where you are, but what we're going to do is focus on some areas where we really have a center of excellence in Nebraska. We are world-renowned in healthcare. We're world-renowned in agriculture. We have tremendous manufacturing and logistics resources and companies in this state. And the ability to take the new economy and attract technology and service companies and ancillary companies around what we're really good at. If you ask me what the vision from a chamber standpoint is that we are bringing those kind of companies in across the state, not just in Omaha and Lincoln, but across the state, that also attracts the workforce. That's going to create the economic growth that we need to make this state very competitive with a lot of other competitive states in the next decade. President?
So I might just say that, you know, at the end of the day, the best way to predict your future is to design it. And the beauty of the design of this process allows Nebraskans to answer the question that you just asked. I mean, we need Nebraskans to tell us what they want their future to look like. What does it mean to have really good, high-paying jobs that give our children the opportunity to stay here if they so wish? And so to get out in front of that process and say we're going to create X number of jobs or Y types of jobs, the process is designed in a way to really understand ourselves in a very meaningful way through research, and then go out and ask Nebraskans, what is it that you want for the future of your children? And so that means, what do the logistics of the state, roads and bridges, need to look like? What does education attainment need to look like? What do the arts need to look like? What does tax policy need to look like? What does healthcare need to look like in urban areas or rural areas? And so if you look at all of the industry councils, they're set up in a way to really capture that information, but we're also doing this in a way to make certain that we're capturing the voices of Nebraskans so that we design a future that they want.
Other questions in Lincoln?
Hi, I'm Matt Olberding with the Journal Star. So we've got some very competing visions, urban, rural, eastern, western. How do you sort of bring everybody together? Because this year's legislature was kind of an illustration of, you've got people in Lincoln and Omaha who want to protect the university, who want, more spending for higher education. You've got people out west who want their property taxes lowered, who want their ag property taxes lowered. So how do you and they have different workforce needs in some respect. I mean, Lincoln and Omaha have a lot of high-tech companies where maybe they want university graduates, whereas in places like, say, North Platte right now, they're offering $25,000 to try to get people to join Union Pacific out there. So how do you I know you want it to be a statewide effort, but you've got a lot of different competing visions for how that might work.
Yeah, actually, I think you would find within the business community, yes, there are some competing visions potentially, but there's probably more in common than there is in difference. What was exciting when the governor hosted the first steering committee meeting was here we had these steering committee members from across the state, and very quickly, it took almost no time, in fact it did take no time, for that committee to gravitate to a unified approach to what do we need for Nebraska, because we're all dependent on each other. Whether you're in Omaha or Lincoln or Scottsbluff, we are all dependent on each other, and we are one state, and our economies are dependent on another. And so it's one of the things I'm most excited about this, is I'm hoping we get past that. But I promised I'd give the hard questions to these two, so I'm going to let the governor speak.
Thank you, Brian. But I think that is one of the strengths of this process, is that it is about bringing together people from across the state, and thus we have the co-chairs in Scottsbluff and Omaha. And we can't be a healthy state if we're only growing Lincoln and Omaha. We have to grow the entire state. And I think that's something that all the steering committee members understand and buy into. And so that will be part of the process of working through this to be able to engage with Nebraskans across the state, to find those areas of commonality and work on them. So this really is something that is going to pull the state together.
So Owen, I'm going to call on you with this question as well. You're out in one of my very favorite places in the state, in Scotts Bluff. How do we answer that question?
Well, I think the fact that we've developed this statewide coalition is really the answer to how we get across these biases of east versus west or urban versus rural. It's truly one of my hopes that one of the outcomes of this whole process is that this rural-urban divide that we have today goes away, and we're all pulling the rope in the same direction.
Any other questions in Lincoln?
I just had one more follow-up to that. So once the effort is, you've gone through the 12, 16 months, you've gotten the input, what kind of steps are people willing to make? Is there willing for some spending on the parts of the chamber, state chamber, Lincoln, Omaha, other communities, willingness on the university, the state to commit money or resources or to input sort of what you hear and say needs to be done?
Yeah, I think when you take a look at it, it's important in terms of getting business and community leaders across the state involved, engaged, and active in this process, so that when we do get to the end of it, and nobody wants to prejudge what the answers are at this point, but when the report is issued, that this is a group that continues for some time to make sure that what is contained in the report becomes actionable. And Lance, I'm going to kind of turn this one to you to see if you've got some thoughts on that as well.
Thank you very much, Brian. Yeah, so the idea is that we will have a blueprint. It's not a thing in time. It's the start of a roadmap that will be refreshed over time. And the idea is there's probably going to be a number of items in there that will require resources. It might require funding. It might require manpower. It might require physical facility. Might require legislation. It'll be a holistic game plan. And that holistic game plan will have an opportunity for many different institutions across the state, to play a role in advancing the state. I don't think there's any idea or any illusion that every single item in that first version of the plan is going to be pursued and pursued successfully. But I think it will set up the idea of a blueprint that says this is a good starting point, and from here let's engage the dialogues so that we can see the art of the possible and make that happen, right? Moving forward on a game plan is going to beat the heck out of the way we're going about it today, which is, individual elements of development that are not very well coordinated. So I think it's an outstanding start.
And I think I'd add one more thing. I'm very proud to be here on behalf of the State Chamber, but I would be remiss if I didn't say that lots of local chambers are and will continue to be involved in this process. And there's already been great contributions from the Omaha Chamber, the Lincoln Chamber, and other chambers. And for everybody involved in the chamber communities across the state, this is an exciting process, and we all have the same interest, which is the continued economic vitality of each of our communities. Other questions? Well, at this point, I'm going to turn to Omaha and any questions that may be at our Omaha site. And Lance, I don't think we have a separate microphone there, so I'm going to ask you to repeat the question if there are any questions there. So are there any questions in Omaha?
Yeah, I might ask, I know that the university president and the governor have had some differences over finance, and I'm wondering how they expect to work together on a project like this.
So I'm going to shorten the question. The gist of the question was, historically, we've had our governor and our president of the university system not see eye to eye on every topic. And the guts of the question is, how will we coordinate that activity going forward as part of this initiative? Let me start, and then I'm going to turn it over back to you, Brian, and Lincoln for the governor and Hank. The first thing to note is that this steering committee that Owen and I have the privilege of chairing is owned by the business community. It's staffed by the business community. It's wonderfully supported by our governor and our university system, and they'll be providing resources and capability and insight. But the owners of the process and the owners of the outcome are the business community and the communities that we represent. And I think that's really, really important to note before I turn it over to our governor.
Well, I would just piggyback on what Lance said, that's exactly right. This is a citizen-led economic development initiative, that it is led by those leaders in agriculture, manufacturing, and business who are putting this together. The president and I will be supporting that effort, and we think this is a great idea, and the president has been through this before, so he knows how it works. So that's really kind of the whole gist on this. And frankly, I would expect that as we go through this process, we aren't always going to see eye to eye. And that's a good thing, that we should have that healthy disagreement to be able to hash out what are the issues that we have to focus on. Where do we make those investments? Where do we put those resources to be able to grow our state? And there will be differences of opinion, but I think as we keep the same mission in mind, which is how do we grow our state, we'll all work together to be able to come up with what is that plan going to look like going forward.
Yeah, so thanks for the question from Omaha. So when I first had this idea about building a strategy, building a blueprint for the future, I went to the governor, and the governor said, I'm all in. I think it's a great idea. We went to the business community. The business community was in. We socialized it with a number of chambers from across the state. And I think the governor's really right. At the end of the day, this is a process that's by business for business in the best interest of the future of the state. And we aren't always going to agree. We are going to, you know, we can look in the rearview mirror and think about the way we've always done things, or we can try to look over the horizon and think about what are the best decisions that we can make for the future of our children and grandchildren. I think everybody on the committee and all of us who are supporting this effort are all in on that particular effort.
I think,
Brian, we've got one more question from Omaha.
sounds good.
So Mississippi did this. What did we learn from Mississippi's mistakes?
The question is, Mississippi did a similar activity, and what have we learned from Mississippi and their mistakes?
So I'll try to take a shot at that, Lance. So Mississippi has been through 2 iterations of Blueprint Mississippi. It's always been led by the business community. The last time that we did it, the business community came to me and asked me to chair the effort. I learned a lot more than I ever thought that I would want to know about economic development. So just maybe a few learning points. The first one is that you first have to be honest with yourself. You really have to be interested in understanding exactly what your state looks like. What are the strengths? What are the challenges? Where are the areas that we can compete? And in a small state like Nebraska or a small state like Mississippi with a very small population, we can't chase every project. So understanding where our real strengths are, what the challenges are, and being brave enough to face those challenges and go fix them is really important. And for Mississippi, it created thousands of jobs, really high-paying jobs, and I have absolute belief that we're going to see the same kind of success in Nebraska that we observed in Mississippi. You know, really when you put lots of good people, smart people who really care about the future of the state, who care deeply about the state, whether it's a university leader or a policymaker or a chamber leader or someone that owns a ranch or a farm or someone that's leading an organization like Union Pacific, when you put that many people together who are really interested in putting the state's needs first, good things happen.
And if I could just build upon what President Bounds said, that I've spoken with Haley Barber and Phil Bryant about this process, and they both found it extremely helpful when they were thinking about what sorts of investments they wanted to make in their state. And I would expect the same sort of opportunities would be here for Blueprint Nebraska as well, to be able to help give us guidance about how we want to guide our future in the future. So again, I think this is an excellent opportunity to bring together people from Nebraska, especially the people who are creating those opportunities, to be able to talk about where do we want to go.
So with that, let me turn to Scotts Bluff. Do we have any questions in Scotts Bluff? And I believe we do not have a microphone there, so Owen, I need your help repeating the questions there as well.
Brian, we have no questions here in Scotts Bluff.
Okay, well, let me wind up with this. So where do we go from here? You know, it's all exciting at this point, but where do we go to take the next steps? Well, the steering committee has obviously met. It will continue to meet at least quarterly from here on out. The separate councils, from everything to agricultural to economic development to quality of life, all those issues and those councils are being developed right now. We suspect in the next several weeks most of that process will be complete, but I will tell you that each of those councils will also be empowered to continue to move and grow in ways necessary to address whatever issues that they choose to address. The researchers are going to begin their process of putting the basic research of what other states have done, what Nebraska has done, what our strengths are. That process will begin soon, and really importantly and somewhat complicated, we are going to begin the process of mapping out the road tour. And it is going to be no small journey to bring Blueprint Nebraska to all these communities, but it is probably the most important thing that we're going to do. And so that mapping process and organizing process will start very quickly. Again, all in all, I suspect that this is a process now, if you asked us, it would take 12 to 16 months. But we are going to make sure that you're kept abreast of the status of this project. You, again, on our website, which is blueprint-nebraska.org, you'll also be able to obtain information from Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook regarding Blueprint Nebraska, and I would encourage you to participate, as we would encourage everybody in the state of Nebraska to participate. Again, the excitement is this this incredible enthusiasm from across the state to have someone like Lance Fritz and Owen Palm agree to chair it from Scotts Bluff to Omaha, to have the governor and to have President Bounds here, and have them in full support of this effort. It's exciting, and we're ready to go forward. So thank you again for attending today's event, and thank you for your passion for Nebraska's future.